Hello. First of all, I would invite you to have a look at this scenery from here. It's spectacular actually. I come from one time to another to enjoy this view here. Probably I should have come in the morning when it was sunny, but I would not say it's nicer because sometimes the clouds make it different, so you can enjoy the scenery here can be very different according to how the clouds move. Anyway, I come here sometimes to meditate. Probably I meditate all the time, but I'm going to tell you a bit about myself. How strange I am. uh, some people find me difficult to understand, and the reason why, or the main reason why they find me difficult to understand, it's myself. Because I don't feel interested, so I would make it easier for them. And being interested means that I assume that okay, they are not the type of people who would go on if I tell them, like, if they should have done something in terms of, like, a multicultural experience. Unless they have it, I don't feel much interested. Okay, there should be something in that respect. So I would tell them more, like, or I would help them more to understand them, to understand me. Uh, of course, like, once you live in different countries, once you learn several languages, you are exposed to different cultures, and this enriches you in one way or another. I would not boast about it, but it might not be all the time beneficial, because there are some disadvantages, like, in the sense that people, sometimes, like, they don't appreciate it because, okay, they might feel inferior, like, they might not approach you. There are many other things, like, that people probably, like, they are looking for people with whom they have many things in common, and it's different, like, for people who are satisfied with friends from their own culture. Or even if we talk about culture is one of the misleading words, or because, like, what does it mean to come from a certain culture? Do you know everything about your culture? No. I think no. Like, it depends to what degree you are cultivated. That not everyone understands, even, like, every word, in their language. Not everyone, like, is familiar with the literature. It's different from one person to another. That I might be, since, like, I have studied, like, English literature and or French literature, for instance. Like, I might know much more than, like, a French speaking person or an English speaking person, like, but I would not say that this means that I'm superior, like, or hey, no, it's not like this. But we're talking about in terms of how, like, being exposed to more than one culture, like, makes things, like, complex. There's kind of complexity on the sense of the personal development, in the sense that you develop responses. You develop to situations, either imaginary or actual, like, you develop certain, and once you have more responses to certain phenomena, phenomenon, okay, you things become more difficult for people who have, like, for example, one response in that regard, and that's why understanding becomes more and more difficult. uh, Anyway, another thing is related actually to my upbringing. It's not to my culture, because this is also, you know, this is another question: to which degree I'm influenced by my culture, or, like, am I influenced actually by other cultures or other thoughts, you know, more than the first one, I would say. Even there's like, which is the first one? I cannot tell actually, because I was influenced by my father, who was a communist, and who was a person who is himself alienated from, like, the religious surrounding, and he wanted to protect us, like, according to his own, set of beliefs. So I would say that we read uh, we read his library, which was like full of Russian literature and, like, that kind of socialist and communist thought. I would say that I was influenced by that kind. But is it like, but it's not only that, and of course, like, I was exposed to a certain degree to some other elements, like, but the other elements were never, like, as strong, like, as influential as this one, which was powerful, of course, because, like, my father has friends, like, everyone, and he was controlling it, like, and I happened to read a poetry at the age of I wrote the first poem, I was 12 or something, but, like, at the age of 16, 17, I was too much interested in poetry, and I went on reading a Syrian poet, Nizar Kabbani, but my father didn't like it, like, because he was not a socialist or communist. Like, he tried to convince me not to go on reading that kind of poetry. Anyway, but he was, on the other hand, he was satisfied because I kept by heart, like, the poems of his favorite poet, I would say. What else? If we talk about, like, the school curriculum, like, this is another question. Does it, for instance, does it really build a certain, what usually say, like, a national character? If it does, to which degree? I would say, like, at that time there was no nationalism, in the sense that, European countries, for instance, or European nations, no, in the sense of having, pupils familiar with, like, the national literature, because in Syria, the school curriculum uh, was Arabist, probably, and until now it's less now, that it means, in, like, not only in, it's not only interested in Syria, it's interested in all the Arab nations. So, like, the history, the only history probably which was not included, it was the Syrian history. There was very little about that, and even literature, it was like, we used to read poets Egyptian, like, they could be Lebanese, so there's nothing, like, it was not a concern for them, like, building this kind of uh, Syrian character. There was nothing like that. For instance, the history of Syria, I probably have already mentioned it, but, like, uh, probably, like, that was the history of civilizations which uh, were there, but, like, there was some kind of emphasis on the Islamic, like, state, uh, not the Islamic state of today. In the historical meaning, like, this kind of Arabo-Islamic state, which, like, spread as an empire, like, how it started and things like that. But you know is it the history of Syria? Yeah, of course, like, the government wanted people to have a certain, like, things in common, according to the ideology of the leading party. it was like this. But like for many communities in Syria, for instance, if there are Kurdish people, there are people whose like Arabic, or modern standard Arabic is the mother tongue of nobody. Like everyone had or has to learn it at school, and like so they were kind of there was kind of an imposed culture, like the one in the Soviet Union, like which was standardizing, like a certain Russian language for everyone, Russian literature and things like that, and things. So, what else? What can be told? Anyway, that's enough for now. I will enjoy the scenery. It's spectacular. I love it, and I will leave you for your meditation.